won't start at 5 until.
Glad you don't work for NASA.
Yeah, no kidding. We had a failed ignition. All right, we got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for it, Doc.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2018 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGillivray Speedway, 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. Tonight's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Verizon IndyCar Series, and the SVRA. A couple of things I want to mention quickly. First off, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Don't forget to remember your Valentine or you could be in deep doo-doo. Anybody a pipe smoker or have somebody that's a pipe smoker? I highly recommend Nate King of King Pipes. He got a great pipe. It's really one of the best that I've ever seen. And you can look up his website and see what he's got. It's www.natekingpipes.com. Check it out. And also, I want to send condolences to the Tom Alibrandi family on the passing of Tom. He was an engineer with the IMS radio network for a number of years, built up a lot of their goodies. And next week, my first guest scheduled is C.J. O'Donnell, the Director of Marketing and Public Relations for both the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series. Anybody anxious to go see a dentist? I know most people aren't. You are, okay. Then I highly recommend the Indy Dental Group. Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have a phenomenal practice. You want to make an appointment, find out if I'm telling you the truth. The number is 317-846-6125. It's about 27 days or something to the opening of the Verizon IndyCar Series in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's getting close. The test this weekend was quite interesting. It's raised a few questions, which we will get to a little later on this evening. But in the meantime, we're going to proceed just like we had better sense. My first two guests are two gentlemen that I've had the honor and privilege and thrill of knowing. The first one sitting close to me is a 2009 graduate of the Indiana University. He got a degree in journalism and political science, and he went right into the political part. He became deputy secretary for the Indiana Department of Education. He went from there to the press secretary for the Indiana Department of Education. In 2013, he was the press secretary for Congresswoman Susan Brooks, and she elevated him because he was so good to director of communications. And then in 2015, he came to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as a director of communications. And I have a number of questions for him, none of which he'll probably be able to answer, but it's going to be fun to have him. Please welcome the one, the only Alex Damron. And sitting next to him is a young man who spent 10 years as the vice president of corporate sponsorship for the 500 Festival in 2015. He also moved over to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but involved in the Museum Foundation, where he's director of development and partnerships. Many changes have gone on at the museum. In fact, the leading lady is here somewhere. I thought I saw her come in. Oh, there she is, yes. Betsy Smith is here. And many things going on at the museum, including they're now doing exhibits. They currently have the pace car exhibit and also the engines of the Indianapolis 500, and we'll find out about what's up and coming, which is kind of exciting. Please welcome Mr. Dave Wilson. And I'm going to, as a little side note, Dave has a sister whom I know. She's a dermatologist, and I visit her. It hasn't done me any good. I haven't gotten any better looking. However, I have found that his sister has several young children, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they have a game they play spoons. He can't play it. He gets whipped by 6 and 7-year-olds.
And his 74-year-old mother. I'm not proud of it, but maybe reflexes are a little slow. I'm a thinker.
When I walked into her office the last time, she said, you had my brother on. I said, yeah. Did you mention spoons? I don't know about it. She told me the story. I said, I can't wait till we get him here.
As soon as we're done, I'm making a phone call, Don. Thanks.
I don't think you have to. I called her office and said, watch tonight. You'll be first up. All right, we'll start with you, Dave. I'll put you on the spot. What is it exactly, your department of the museum? What do you have? Now, I found, which I didn't know, that when a exhibit comes in, you look for sponsors because there are people that have vehicles you want, and you say, if you want it, here it is coming in, you got to finance it. So is that part of what you do, is finding sponsorships for exhibits, among other things?
Well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Short answer is yes. I think you've been generous to have us on here quite a few times in the last couple years, as we started first with the Roger Penske, Team Penske 50th anniversary exhibit, which was tremendous and really transformed the way the museum looked. And that was very generously supported by Pennzoil, which obviously a key Penske sponsor for many years and an iconic brand here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So we are a separate organization from the track that sometimes you can't tell us apart because we work so well together, and they're our largest supporters by far. However, their focus is clearly on the greatest spectacle in racing and running a facility that is second to none in terms of sports arenas and many events a year. So the responsibility to programming the inside of the museum falls on the museum staff, the foundation staff. And for many years, the museum was an incredible, and still is, an incredible collection that was amassed by Mr. Holman. And we were able to present that, and that was enough. One of the things that we've started undertaking here in the recent years, much like the evolutions that you see at the Motor Speedway that are making the experience better for guests and fans, and the $100 million that they've been able to invest in their facilities, we're starting to invest in ours so that we're telling more stories and giving people more reason to come back. And for the first time, that costs money. And we do not have a history of support because of the generosity that has existed from the track and family members. And so now we are venturing out. You've heard us talk about our member program, which is a critical component for us moving forward. And one of the reasons you become a member is because it's cheaper than paying cover. So we're creating exhibits so that you make multiple visits to the museum and you become a member. You get to come to special events. So in the case of the A.J. Foyt exhibit, for instance, we had a lot of things that hadn't been together before. And if you heard A.J., he said, God, I haven't seen this car in years. And so bringing things to the museum that you haven't seen before, because who here has seen the Marmon Wasp? It's still there. But now we have engines right now that race from almost that era that you can see how they were put together and how they competed. It's another way to tell the story and to see that, right? So bringing cars in from out of town or memorabilia or producing incredible brochures that you keep with all this great information, unfortunately costs money. And so part of our challenge now is, how do we generate revenue so we can invest it? It's just like a race team. You know, Scott Dixon with PNC this year, Ganassi now has some more corporate funding to continue to hire the best people they can, do more testing. They invested in the product. They invest that sponsorship in the programming, and they put a better on-track product for the fans, right? And that's what we're now trying to do with our exhibits, is get them funded so that we can spend money for everyone here to come see.
Okay.
He's so good about talking about all this, you should just keep asking him questions.
No. Now, I heard him say something that got my attention. He said that you, as the representative of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that the Speedway provides them a lot of services, so that the Speedway, although they're not literally connected, you do work with them to help them in things that you have access to that they don't. So you can help them by doing what is it you do for the museum?
Well, I would say they help us out a lot, too. I mean, I think it's really a partnership, more than anything, and we're so lucky that they're located right there, and frankly, when we have people come visit the track, it's so great to take them to the museum. But, I think we work together, really, to make sure that our history that we're so proud of is on display, frankly, not just at the museum, but different parts of the track come May. And as well, just sort of, I think, working together to spread the message that IndyCar, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, has a really good story to tell, and we want people to come see it in venue and elsewhere, too.
Now, I mentioned that you were in Washington, D.C., working for Representative Brooks.
Yes.
working at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indianapolis better than being in Washington, D.C.? Now, be careful.
Well, I mean, working at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is a really amazing experience that I don't think there's nothing like 500 race day, right? I will say 500 race day hits you in a way that sort of State of the Union Day does in DC. It's the one day where the world sort of comes together. And so it was a really interesting parallel for me because I wondered what 500 race day would feel on the working side. I'd obviously been to the 500 as a spectator before. And while nothing quite compares to it, the only thing in my career previously that I thought had that feel was State of the Union Day, where everything just stops. But I think really interestingly enough, there's similarities in the sense that, when you go to Congress, you have constituents, people that you're elected to serve. And in a big sense, because the Speedway is such a community gathering place and because it has such a long history, we have constituents too, a lot of them who are sitting in this room, fans who care deeply about the state of the race and the state of the series and everything that we do. So, when I started actually, did anybody participate out of curiosity in a project called the People's 500 before the 100th running?
Yes.
So it was an interesting experience where we brought an artist out and we did a series of fan interviews with lifelong fans talking about what the track meant to them. And it was kind of one of my first opportunities to just hear people's stories of going with their great-grandfather and their grandparents to the race. And I would say those are the parallels that I see. People are deeply invested and they care so much about the future of the track in a similar way, in some senses, the way they might call a congressional office and say, I really care about this issue that I followed a long time or that means a lot to my family.
Now, one thing I've noticed under the direction of Mark Miles and Doug Bowles and people, the Speedway is promoting different ways. And one of the things that got my attention was when I saw an announcement come out that the green flag is going on a world tour. And I got an email from a friend of mine, Willie Kay, with no relation. He's in New Zealand. And he said, is the flag coming to New Zealand? I said, how in the world would I know? But I'll find out. And he said, I'd love to have it. I'll help. I'll do anything I can. Because in case nobody remembers, there's a kid that's won the series 4 times and a 500 champion by the name of Scott Dixon.
Yeah, he's a pretty good race car driver, huh?
Not bad. He's a pretty good kid. And there's a lot of fans in New Zealand. So I guess you finally did connect with him. And I know I got an email back said he's all excited. Wow.
He's excited. I'm excited. I mean, sending the green flag to New Zealand's really cool. I was trying to do I think it's the farthest trip it will take. There's maybe 1 or 2. I'm still working on my geography. But, the green flag relay, which is what we're calling it, the global green flag relay, we were sitting around and we were talking about how starting with the 100th running, we started delivering all these milk bottles. And the milk bottle is such an iconic symbol of Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Indy 500 tradition. And we found that we were giving these milk bottles to everybody from Sports Center hosts to longtime fans to our oldest serving yellow shirt. And they meant so much to people, and it was such an exciting thing to do in the build-up to the race to first of all, reward a lot of people, frankly, who mean so much to the race, but also to sort of amp up the excitement. So we were sitting around, and we were saying, we're going to do milk bottles again this year. We're going to deliver them. But what else can we do? What's something different? What's another thing that says Indy 500, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that means so much to fans? So for a lot of people, when the green flag is waved on race day, that's like a second Christmas morning, right? It's such an exciting moment for you, and we thought the green flag's an iconic symbol of race day. Let's do something with it. And then somebody said, let's take it around the globe, and we kind of all had that moment, and we were like, okay, let's do it. I think I'm so excited to work on the project. For those of you who haven't been able to track it so far, we actually took the green flag to New York City and closed the NASDAQ with it. With Allison Millington, our senior vice president of events, to kick off the tour. And then Alexander Rossi, our 100th running champion, actually took it to the NHL All-Star Game in Tampa Bay. And now it is somewhere really cool I can't tell you about yet. We're going to announce on Friday, 100 days from the 100th running, where it is, but it's in a really cool spot.
Is it at your house?
No, it's not in my car. It's not in my house. It's somewhere else. I promise. That would be like a really funny trick, right? If I told you guys it was all somewhere really cool, I'm still figuring it out. And it is going to go to New Zealand, which I got to thank you. I'll shake your hand for that. We're really excited about that. And I think that story sort of brings up one of the pieces of this that is the coolest, which is we started with a map on the wall, and we said, where are some really neat, interesting spots we can take this, spots that would mean something to 500 fans, or that are easily recognizable, or that sort of live up to the pomp and circumstance and the feel of the Indy 500. And then from there, we announced this, and we started getting people calling us, emailing us, saying, hey, we want to be part of the Green Flag Tour as well. And it's cool because I think that's a recognition of the 500's brand, right? It's a recognition of how much it means to people and how much our history still resonates when you announce something like this. And not just people from Indianapolis, but people from across the globe are actually calling you the next day saying, how can we be a part of this? So it's exciting. And, if you go to ims.com/greenflagrelay, you can actually track the flag on its adventures. So definitely check back on Friday.
Is Dave taking it around any of these places, or are you taking it?
I can't tell you who is.
Oh, jeez.
Well,
there's a couple different people helping out, and hey, if you want to take it somewhere, man, you let me know.
I'll take it. Well, and to Alex's point is, we see that in the museum every day. People from all over the world come here to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and they come to the museum. Marty and her staff have put up a map, and they've got push pins. And it is amazing the people that have come from around the world to 16th Street. And I think part of our job at the museum is they've gotten to the campus once. How do we tell the story and present the experience of the Indy 500 or the other events at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in a way that gets them to come back and become fans? Or what's their personal moment if they're here today? If you're a Takuma Sato fan and there's the cutout of the Borg, of him standing by the Borg and actual size for each of them, and you get your picture taken with that. I mean, there's so many connections that start in Indianapolis that resonate throughout the world, and that's a great initiative. So
I will say one of my favorite things to do at the museum is to go look at the book that's in the front entryway, and you can flip through and see people where they're from, and they sign their names and say they've come from Japan or Oklahoma City or wherever, and I always stop and do that. It's another fun way to see exactly what you're saying, that we just resonate.
Global impact.
Really? I find the museum very interesting, and I think the idea of putting in exhibits enhances it. I say, what's there now? Let's go see that, because we didn't see it when we were here last year. And what's the next one when this one goes away? And I think in April there's a new one coming in. And what is that?
There is a new exhibit that will open after the incredible engines of the Indianapolis 500 and the Camaro 50 Years of Setting the Pace closes at the end of March. In April, we will have the amazing Unsers from Albuquerque to Indianapolis, celebrating the great tradition, history, and success of the Unser family. Obviously, you think of Unsers, you think of winning, and you think of racing. You've got Pikes Peak. They just were so extensive throughout the generations that it's an incredible story for us to be telling, and we're really excited about that. And I think, and one more point kind of to Alex's point, is one of the things that we've been able to do with getting sponsors that we want to do is we've gone out to Albuquerque and have like Bobby Unser talk about some of the objects, and some of the cars that are going to be on display. So you'll be able to go to our website, smartphone, or one of those audio tools, mechanisms that you see sometimes at museums, where you can audio tour Unser, press 7. Hi, this is my 100-mile-an-hour jacket. I knew when I put it on that I'd really made it. Horrible Bobby Unser. I hope he's not watching. I love you, man. Love you a long time. But part of that is now that the objects that we have on display, be them memorabilia, be them moments, be them cars, is that the owner or the person who made it that is now telling you about that. And then once we have that, and we have that mechanism in place to do that, we can do that for other things in the museum. And when we've got the handheld audio things, we can then translate that into foreign languages. And you can have Takuma Sato translate parts of the museum to Japanese for our international visitors. You can have Tony Kanaan and or Elio, and I don't know, do we have to translate it in New Zealand? We have Dixon. I suppose we just read it a little different.
I think it'll be all right.
But part of that is being able to speak to that international audience and fans and get them connected directly with the history that's here.
One of the things that I mentioned to you was brilliant, totally brilliant idea, Alex, was when you get to race day and you bring the flag, what are you going to do with it? My brilliant suggestion was get a world-class runner that people will know. Have him come running into the track, take it a lap around, come in out of turn 4 down the pit lane. There's an easier way than this. Go down around and through the tunnel, come out the other side, come around, climb up the ladder, and hand the flag to the starter.
You guys like that idea?
Totally brilliant.
I think it's a pretty good idea. We might have to bring you on as a consultant here for the end of the tour. We're going to do something cool, and there are that idea is on the board as well as a few others. I think as this has taken off, we have realized to Don's point that we need a really interesting ending. So something great is in the works. It's also enough of an endeavor that my team all kind of stared at me when we were first talking about it because they realized there's a lot of moving pieces to it, but I think it'll be exciting. Will you run?
Yeah, probably from here to there. At best.
I'll do it with you if you do it.
Yeah. There's all kinds of things going on at the Speedway constantly. There's events going on. I've heard a rumor, I don't know if this is true, that there's going to be some kind of a major concert with 4 or 5 major groups coming in. I don't know if that's true all in one day, I've heard. And the interesting thing that I find is the first time I had Mark Miles on, I said, are you guys looking at utilizing this other than the 3 races? He said, no, not really. Well, obviously that idea didn't last real long and why not use it? I mean, you've broken the tradition now. I know I was like a lot of the diehard fans when they brought NASCAR. I thought, it's changing everything, but it's changing, the world's changing, so why not utilize the facility? It sits there for quite a lot of time. I imagine the tax bill is more than I want to pay. Certainly the electric bill is, even when it's not operating. So to do that, and I got to assume there are things on the planning stage that might utilize the facility when it's shut down.
Well, I think the facility means so much to the community and to the sporting world. It makes sense to see what else we can do to sort of share our message and share an iconic place with different people from, frankly, around the country and around the globe. What I think is interesting is there's certainly a lot of focus for good reason on some of the new and exciting events that have come from the Red Bull Air Race to the new LPGA tournament. But I also think what a lot of people don't realize is how often it's simply a community gathering spot. Does anybody have a dog at home?
Oh, yeah, the puppy walk or whatever it's
called? The Mutt Strut.
Yeah.
It's an amazing event, and it's one of those experiences where for pet owners to get to walk the track with a cherished member of their family, frankly, means a lot. So certainly the events like Red Bull Air Race and the concerts we've been able to put together grab the headlines, and for good reasons. They're world-class events that bring world-class athletes and artists to the venue. And we're always, looking for opportunities to do that type of thing. I also think it's so interesting to see the development of sort of the community initiatives that have become part of the track over the recent years. But I think certainly, in this day and age, the facility has certainly morphed into more of a year-long facility. We have the Indy 500 in May, and now we have toward the end of summer and fall, the Brickyard 400 with a new cooler date. If it's been a little hot for anybody, I think we're pretty optimistic the weather will be a little cooler this year. And then the LPGA event and the Red Bull Air Race as well. So
holiday lights.
Yeah, and holiday lights, of course. So I think, frankly, there's opportunities year-round for the family, and that's a wonderful thing because it's a great facility we should be sharing with people.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I had a granddaughter that came and ran the mini marathon, and I said, the biggest part you're going to have was when you go around the Speedway. Oh, it's a racetrack. I said, okay. She got done. She said, holy cow, is that place big? Bigger than you realize.
Yeah, and I think, what's fun, so I want to say like my 3rd month on the job when I was still learning my way around, Mayor Ballard reached out to us and had some cricket players from another country coming in and said, could they come check it out? And it's kind of like people's first time in New York City. They sort of do this. And what the track makes people do, you don't quite look up like you do with New York City, but what the track always makes people do is do a 360. So they kind of sort of look up and then just do this because they're so overwhelmed with what they're seeing for the first time, especially if they don't exactly know where they're completely exactly what to expect. So one of my favorite things to do, frankly, is share the track with somebody for the first time because you can just see the magnitude of it all hit them. So just out of curiosity, what's like the Don K concert lineup? And then we can compare it to mine.
If I told you half of the ones that I would suggest aren't alive anymore, And the ones that are coming have been listed to come. I haven't a clue who they are. Not
Seals
a clue.
and Croft.
Well, I've heard of that one.
So the snake pit lineup this year, Diplo,
Who?
Deadmau5.
Really? Yeah, well, there's some of those. I have no idea. But I will
Carb Day might be more up your
I'm
alley.
not so sure of that either. But I have to say that I am from the original snake pit, which I dearly loved. I'd come home from a weekend down here, and my wife said, "Where the hell are the pictures of the cars?" Oh, they were there, but I was watching something else.
We might have to grab a beer and talk about that without a mic.
But what impresses me is...
Were those photographs we had to take down from the Photoshop?
Yes, that's one of them, yeah.
That was you. I remember you.
Yeah. When they brought the snake pit back in its current, in the first year they had, 6,000 or 7,000 people maybe. Now they get 35,000 and more to come to this thing. It has really picked it up. And the thing I found kind of interesting was the original concept was, we hope some of them are here, they'll stay for the race. And it's worked.
Absolutely. So one of the things a lot of people who haven't been to the new snake pit don't know is that we actually show sort of the end of pre-race and the transition to racing live on the screens out there. And it's really important for us to do that because we want to make sure that while they might be having a concert experience, the attendees also understand the larger event and purpose that they're connected to. And I think what we're sort of starting to see is the 500 is one of those events that a lot of people put on their calendar because they want to be a part of something that is more than just themselves and is really a true community event. We're seeing a lot of people who've come to the snake pit for a couple years say, okay, maybe I'm graduating out of the snake pit, and they're still coming to the race. And the reason why is because they're learning that Memorial Day weekend for them, their tradition is to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and celebrate the Indy 500. So I think that's a really good thing. And, I frankly, my first year, had a couple buddies who came out and did the snake pit, but also went up and looked at the cars and tuned into the race at Detroit next week because they were so impressed with what they saw. So the idea is to sort of share all of what we're about with the new generation, and definitely by the numbers you're talking about, I think it's working and a good thing.
It's amazing, and I've seen people leave and go in the stands, and when they leave, they let the ones that had ticket couldn't get in. Now they get to go in, so it's quite a fascinating thing the way it's turned out.
Yeah.
Dave, how different is the job you have now with the Speedway compared to what you did for the 500 Festival? Now, you were there for about 10 years.
I was just starting to get the hang of it after 10 years. It's very, very similar, really, because the festival is a community organization that puts things on, that gets the community excited for the month of May, be it the mini marathon, being able to run around the track, or the parade the day before the race with the starting field in it. And whereas they have events and programs for a month, basically, that are leading up to the race, I think our opportunity is that we're similar institutions in that we've got a physical place to be, and we can be that community and month of May kind of gearing up to that 11 months out of the year. And so for us, it's May all the time. And so how do we manage to bring the community, as Alex said, being a community resource, whether it's speaking events with Donald Davidson, whether it's Cars and Coffee on the second Saturday of the month during the summer where 400 cars come to the track and get together and get coffee and donuts. And so how do we become a community asset? And so the way we did that at the festival was you had sponsors like IPL who sponsored the parade, and they invested in programming. And that's exactly the situation that we have here, which is we need to invest in our programming, and that's where sponsors and community support and members will help us invest in it. And then you have a better parade, you have a better exhibit. More people come because there's more to see and there's more to do. And then we're a greater asset to the track because we're doing this every day.
Well, I got to tell you, we'll cut right to the chase. The main reason people go to the museum, first off, you walk in, you get to see Marty. Wow.
True that.
I mean, it isn't they get to see you. And then if you have a question and you need something, you see the even equally as amazing Betsy Smith, who runs the show, and you better be nice because she's taking notes on what you've said.
I think I've been polite.
Is he passing? Thumbs up? Thumbs down?
Oh, he's on. Okay.
That was close. The Russian judge was a little slow with the score.
I want to thank you, too, for taking the time to come here. I know I've been trying to chase Alex down, and I go to voicemail. I didn't have his cell number, so I couldn't text him, which was on purpose, I'm sure. because he didn't have to answer the phone. I'm at a meeting. Geez, how many meetings a week can you go to? I guess every day, but I thank you for the time to come here, and I hope that, and I know that when you get to New Zealand, Willie, if he has to fly to somewhere to meet the flag, he'll be there.
Well, I'll see you when we're running that marathon together at the end of the relay.
Right. I'll get you to this tunnel and say goodbye, and then I'll go watch him climb up or whatever you're going to do.
If you hit the finish line with the green flag at the Yard of Bricks, that is history, and that will have to go to the museum.
What, me when I keel
That'll
over?
be tremendous.
When I keel over, you mean?
A statue of you and the flag.
Yeah. I want to thank both of you, Dave. It's always a pleasure, and you always go out of your way to come up here, and I think what's going on at the museum to me makes a lot of sense. Reason you have the cars, and there's a bazillion cars. How many cars would you say have never been on display? Is there any, or are they all at one time or another been there?
We've got more cars than we can display.
Oh, I know.
If anybody's
that.
got any money, we'll build a bigger building right now, and you can see some more of them. We're probably 3 or 4 times more vehicles.
Yeah, I think
total.
From what I've been told, this is probably the largest collection of antique cars. I mean, they used to brag about Harrah's and his collection. I would be willing to bet this one's bigger. But
Well, Don, that founders level membership at the Indianapolis Speedway Museum gets you a look at some of those cars that are perhaps beneath the ones that you can see at the Indianapolis Speedway Museum. I'm just
what the
saying.
hell is he? Are you a salesman?
I hope so.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you know in about a half hour.
Thanks for your time, both of you. And if you get a chance, you got to get to the museum. And don't forget, coming May, I think, or April 9th, the Unsers will come in. Between the 3 Unsers, Bobby, Al, and Al Jr., there's 9 wins. So there's got to be a few things worth seeing there.
Absolutely. So look forward to seeing you.
Thanks, everybody.
And looking forward to hearing about the tour. Thanks for coming. Alex, Damron, and Dave Wilson. My next guest will be up here in just a minute. He's talking to Marty at the moment. So I will remind you, Bill, I want to remind you that Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville, Indiana has what you're looking for in the way of a Chevrolet car. He is located in Daleville, which is where you go when you want to find the best prices on the cars in the country. You go to the country in Daleville. When you're there, you will see why he is always listed and by customers as the best service in the business. Just take I-69 north to exit 34, go east 1 mile, and you will see him on the right. Big car dealership. You want to take a ride and see what drivers like about the Indy car? Take a ride with their Indy racing experience in the 2-seater. It runs throughout the summer here at the Speedway. So make a reservation, or you can go to their website at indyracingexperience.com, find a date that will work for you, and then in the promo box you put SJ1, you get a 50% discount, or you can call Shonda at 317-243-7171, and she'll help you as well. You need any embroidery? Go to Stitches 2 on Gasoline Alley, just south of the Speedway. Anything you need embroidered, you can get it. Just get it there, throw it, drag it, mail it, whatever it is. Fran will take care of it. Give her a call at 317-271-3444. Is it time to get new insurance for your home or your car or commercial building? Do what I did. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance in Speedway, located at 5004 West 16th Street, and you will find you get better coverage for less money. Give them a call. The number is 317-248-0070. That's 317-248-0070. VP Insurance in Speedway. And if you are a vintage car fan, you've got to go to SVRA.com and subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. It's a great magazine, first-class job, and a lot of the cars that you knew growing up are still around, and they're out running them. So go to SVRA.com, subscribe to the magazine. And for those of you that are able to do it, the next event for the SVRA is this weekend, the 16th to the 18th at the Roebling Road Raceway in Bloomingdale, Georgia. If you're anywhere in the area, get out there and see him. My next guest is a gentleman that I'm always pleased to have come by. He always has something to say. He is inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America for his almost 60 years of work in safety. And if there's anybody that knows safety, this is the guy. He's always got something interesting to say. Please welcome Mr. Bill Simpson.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Several months ago, you called me up one day and you said, you want some controversy? I said, sure. Who? Me? Oh. What's that about? Well, I'm not happy with what happened down in Florida with Dave Steele. And you indicated a couple of times, or one time anyway, that you made some calls to some series and said, here's what you guys need to do to protect your drivers. And one of them told you, what do you got to do with this? Which, of course, didn't set well with you. What's happened since that all took place? Has there been some changes?
Yes, there's been, I believe I was talking to Kenny Colesbeck this afternoon. There's 17 organizations that have made a full containment seat mandatory. I think the last holdout is USAC. They're dragging their feet about a money issue or something, but it'll come real soon.
A money issue? Why? What's the money? They're not going to pay for it.
Well, I suppose their train of thought is that they don't want to have these kids have to come out and spend $1,800, $2,000 for a full containment seat. They'd rather bury them, I suppose.
Well, I guess that's a good idea. And you helped. There was a new seat developed, which you were involved a lot in helping prove it, helping demonstrate what it's capable of doing. How was that thing progressing?
Well, it's done, and like I said, I was talking to Kenny today. I'm trying to figure out what the hell to talk to you about tonight. So anyway, we chatted about where he's at with that full containment seat, and he's way far along. It's SFI certified. I guess it's been well received by all the midget guys and the sprint car guys, and it's a very nice piece. I mean, we wore out all kinds of equipment in my shop, in my test shop, when we were doing all these tests. It's been particular with attention being paid to the mounting of the seat.
There's been a lot of noise made the last month or so about the windscreen on Indy cars. I've got some concerns, and I got to think if somebody like me has some concerns, somebody that knows what they're talking about, like yourself, would have even more.
Well, I talked to Mike Hull today also, and talked to Dixon, and Dixon's only comment was that it was pretty hot inside the car, but I think that they can put NACA ducts to get some cooling inside the car. I don't think it's a new venture, if you will, because I remember back in about 1983 or 84, they were using those windshields that looked like that on the kart cars, and they didn't last very long. But my understanding about the test that went on in Phoenix for the last couple of days, there was no issues other than what I can see is the fact that they're going to cost about $70,000 or $80,000. I mean, they're made by PPG, the same people that make windshields for jet airplanes. And I know if you have a crack in one panel, just one panel, it would be maybe three square feet. You're looking at $40,000 to $60,000. So I can't imagine what that piece is going to be that's wrapped around. And then there's other issues in my mind, and then one of those would be that the people that are designing it, namely Trammell and Horton, I don't think they ever started a race in any kind of a car, and they have no idea what happens at the first 4 or 5 laps with all the commotion that goes on and all the stuff that's flying around in the air and all the overflow things from the transmissions and the motor boxes and all that stuff. But I don't know how they're going to put tear-offs on there. You know, you got the driver wears 5 or 6 tear-offs, and now in the 3rd or 4th lap, one of the first tear-offs gone. And how they're going to do that? They've got they're looking through a windscreen that they can't see through.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, the helmet has tear-offs, 4 or 5 of them for a race, and you start splattering a little bit of oil. Now what? You got your windshield is bad. You can't put a wiper on it because all you're going to do is smear it. So now you've messed up the strategy because you've got to come in and take the tear-off off and go back out again. So it makes a stop that you might not want to make.
Well, like I said, the jury's out. Scott was running by himself, so he never had anything that he could go by to say that there was somebody in front of him. And I guess time will tell. My thought process on this thing is, I don't know why they're going to do that, other than they think that it's going to be more safe for the driver in case something comes off a car. seems to me like you'd be better off tethering those pieces and parts to the chassis than put the driver in a situation that could be just as dangerous.
You started your safety career by protecting yourself after having a crash and breaking both of your arms. I think your uncle or somebody said maybe you ought to put a parachute on the back. Since he had a surplus store, that's how this whole thing started. And once you showed up with one, everybody said, hey, that's an idea.
Yeah.
And you've built 60 years onto that, and one of your big things has always been a helmet. Now, it's my understanding from our conversations that when you kind of got out of the helmet business, you had a chance meeting with Tom Moore, coach of the coach for the Colts, and invited you to a game and mentioned that, you know, when the guy gets his bell rung, yeah, that happens, and you had an idea, you got to look into that. And you got into the helmet business full bore and have done remarkable with what you have compared to what's available is amazing.
Well, we're working with kids. We're not working with adults with that program. And I think that right at the moment, it's a big political battle. Everybody knows what goes on with the NFL and all those things that surround the NFL. And we're just moving along at our pace. We think that we have some technology that will be the future, even though we don't see that right now. I mean, you know, like we look at Riddell, they make maybe a couple 100,000 helmets a quarter. If we're lucky, if we make 10,000 in a year, but that's okay. We're you know, it's new and it's super lightweight and it does all the things that it's supposed to do.
And I read where you said the advantage to what you have developed and are working to continue to develop is when something happens to a football player, or for that matter a driver, the weight of the helmet can cause as much damage to your neck because of that. And your helmets are amazingly light, and the absorption material you have inside absorbs a good portion of the impact so that it doesn't affect the brain quite as much.
That's what it's supposed to do.
That's the whole idea, yeah. That's the whole idea. But it seems like you come up with ideas and people think, well, you know, and as you said, the NFL is not noted for being, rocket scientists. When somebody has something, why wouldn't a world wouldn't they look at it? I heard there was a test of helmets, but you weren't invited.
No, that's not exactly what happened.
Oh.
If you want to know what happened, and
Okay.
we want to open up that can of worms, we had a discussion with Terry Trammell and Horton about this 8860 FIA helmet. And my contention is and was that the helmet is way too strong, way too stiff, and creates more damage to the driver than if he didn't have that helmet. And Terry Trammell came to me one day and he says, you need to stop scaring my drivers about this helmet thing. And I said, well, when did they become your drivers is what I want to know. And anyway, I said, I'll make you a deal, Terry. We'll take the 2010 Snell helmet, which I don't know, a lot of guys that aren't racers in here don't know if there's a Snell standard for certifying a helmet, and then you go over to the other side, you have the FIA thing. Anyway, I said the Snell helmet that's been being made, it's been made since 2000, is a better product than the FIA helmet that you're making these guys wear. It's mandatory. And he goes, are you telling me that a 2010 Snell helmet's better than an FIA 8860? I said, that is exactly what I'm telling you, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. If you want to do a back-to-back test, you go ahead and collect some helmets from the garage area, from various manufacturers, and we'll take them up to Cape and we'll do some back-to-back drop tests. And if I'll make you a deal, if the Snell 2010 helmet is less performance than the 8860, I'll shut up. I won't say another word. But if the inverse is true, that you have the 8860 underperforming the 2000 Snell helmet, then I'll look in the rule book for the next year, and it won't say that that's mandatory. It'll say that it's recommended. How about that? And Terry goes, you got a deal, man. We got a deal. I said, okay, fine. Now, it takes 2 years before he gets this test lined up, and they called me and they said, tomorrow morning we're doing the test. And I said, oh, thanks for the warning, you know. So I show up at Cape up in, it's Westfield, and they got a tower set up there that's 32 feet tall. I've never seen a helmet drop from a free fall for 32 feet. No, you know, John, you know, it's crazy. So anyway, he's doing his tests, and on every single one of these, the 8860 fails in comparison to the Snell 2000. So I said to Trammell, I said, well, the proof's in the pudding, you know. Liars figure, but figures don't lie. And then he got kind of pissy with me, and he goes, what do you think your football helmet would do? I said, I don't have any idea. I never dropped anything from that height. I'd never even heard of that before. So he says, you got one with you? I said, I got two of them out in my truck. So I went out and got them helmets out of the truck, put them on the test rig, and dropped each one individually, and both of them were 1,000 points better than the best that he had dropped. And I said, well, I guess that goes to show you the football helmet's a little bit ahead of the car racing helmet, huh? So I said to him, now am I going to see in the rule book that the FIA helmet is recommended, not mandatory? And he starts backtracking. And I said, Terry, I've known you for a long time. Are you telling me that you're a welcher? Not only do you not know what you're talking about, but you don't pay your debts. And he goes, well, how could you say that? I said, well, I can, you know, we have the information right here, which, by the way, I'm going to pass all these papers out so y'all can see that I'm not bullshitting you. Hey, John, pass them out to people. You know, I come prepared.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, when you get this thing, you'll see a thing, it's called HIC, which is a head injury criteria, and then there's an SI, which stands for severity index. The lower the number, the better the product. And on all these graphs, you'll notice that the Snell helmet is better than the FIA 8860. But I waited till the proper time to bring this forward. I didn't want to create a firestorm and a war with myself and Terry Trammell, but I just felt that this couldn't go unanswered. So that's what we have here.
Now, that being the case and having tested your football helmet against a racing helmet, are you looking to adjust your football helmet and come out with a racing helmet, or is that too much of a hassle with that as well?
Well, we have a prototype. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. You know, it's once again, you know, it's an uphill battle, and I don't really want to fight with those guys. It's just life's getting too short, man. I'm 78 years old.
No, I feel the same way. I'm 78 as well.
Yeah. So, you know, it gets to a point where you just get tired of fighting with people.
Yeah, but you know, the thing about it is you've been doing this for 60 years, and I was somewhere, Bill was the other day or a week or so ago, and one of the drivers came up and thanked him for what he's done to save injury and death to drivers for his various, I mean, he used to have a fire suit hanging in his office that Whit Bazemore wore. It had a big fire in the front of his funny car, and it burned the suit, but it didn't burn him. That the stuff that you have made has been world class, which is why you're in the Motorsports Hall of Fame. So why would somebody argue with you?
Well, I don't know, man. You know, I think if the guy he's an orthopedic surgeon, and that must make him be a jack of all trades and a master of none, I suppose. I don't know. You know, it's just all I'm saying is I know what I have. I know what I've been doing for all my life, basically since I was a teenager, and if I haven't absorbed anything over all that period of time, man, I'm pretty stupid. And you know, you can't fix stupid.
As I mentioned one other time, I was out looking for somebody on a Sunday, and he had an office and a shop over on 21st Street, I think it was. And I drove around the back, I noticed the door is open, and who's in there sewing suits? Him. So I pulled up and said, what in the world are you doing? He said, well, these suits were made wrong. I collected them all from all the teams that had them, and we're remaking them at no charge, which had to cost a pile. But this is what you do. Bill Simpson and safety and saving lives is what you do. So I can't imagine you not figuring out some way to say, here.
Well, I try, you know.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a great story. This is about Bill Smith, and there's a lot of hot rodders in here that do business with Speedway Motors, and Billy passed away here about 7 or 8 years ago. When I made my first parachute, Garlett's got one. And I get a phone call from Bill Smith in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm a 17-year-old kid. He says, is this Bill Simpson? And I went, yeah. And he goes, this is Bill Smith. I own Speedway Motors. And I said, okay, what? He says, I want to buy 3 of them parachutes. How much money do they cost? I said, they're $30 a piece. And he goes, okay, I want to buy 3 of them. I said, okay, how am I going to get paid? And he says, I'll send you a check. I said, well, how am I going to get them to you? He says, go down to the Greyhound bus station and put them in cargo, and they'll come to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'll send you back a check. And I think back on that, I go, oh, times have changed.
And you've done a lot of you did a lot of business with him over the years.
Oh, yeah, he was the greatest. And his family, they're first-class people.
You know, you started with the parachutes because you hurt yourself.
Well, that's true. I did that.
Yeah. And your uncle said, here was what you needed. It just so happens I got a surplus store, and I happen to have some.
Well,
strangely enough.
yeah, it was a little different than that, because I went up there and asked him if I could get a parachute like they drop tanks out of airplanes. And he gave me a parachute, and I brought it back, and we put it back behind a 55 Chevy station wagon and went down a hill in Redondo Beach called 190th, and I was with Mike Sorokin, and we threw this thing out, and it was, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were going maybe 90 miles an hour, and this great big 44-foot parachute opened and picked the car up, and the wind blew it off into a big nursery. And we had dirt stuck up our nose, and wherever place, any orifice that you could think of, you know, when the cops got there. And of course, we got to go to the Gray Bar Hotel and get our picture took.
But you know, I think I told you this one day. I wish I was about 30 years younger. I'd love to work for you, because I think that, you know, your mind works in a different way than others. You don't, I mean,
Yeah,
you have an
true.
idea, but when you come up with an idea, you don't just say, here it is, you go out and prove it. I mean, if you go to his shop and see the test equipment, you got a lot of money invested in test equipment. When you
Yeah.
say this works, you're not taking a guess, you know it does.
Well, I have a pretty good idea that it does. That's for dang sure. So, you know, talk about Dave Wilson there in the Speedway Museum. I don't know, is he still here?
Yeah, there he is.
Okay, my deal, I think that I'm going to draft John Martin in this thing, and we're going to drive your bus on the Speedway with spectators in the back, and you have to sell tickets, and then you can raise yourself a little bit of money. Or John can ride shotgun with me, or vice versa, and we can do dissertations and talk about stuff that happened. Well, look what happened right there. You remember that, John? Oh, yeah, there's wheels flying.
That would be a different tour, that's for sure. You know, one of the most famous things that's on the front of the book that Bones did on you is when you set yourself on fire the first time in your fire suit to prove the point that it works.
I think that was George Snyder who took a hot dog and
Yeah.
stuck it in the fire.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at that thing, and what have I got myself into with this deal?
But you know, it came out in posters. It was on the front cover of your book. That's probably one of the most widely viewed pictures in all of motorsport that I can think of, because you see it all the time, everywhere. It was everywhere.
The company made about 1 million of them and distributed them.
That was nice.
Yeah, well, I owned the company.
I know. I know. You know, it's just amazing that you happenstance, as I understand it, with Tom Moore and talk about other things, and then you get invited to a football game, and the guys, I think Dallas Clark got whacked in the head, and you said something about, boy, and he said, oh, that happens all the time, and it got you thinking, There's got to be a better answer to this than injuring your football players.
Well, that was Austin Collie that got knocked out.
Okay, yeah.
I think that almost ended his career. But when I first met Tom Moore, I met him at Rick's Boatyard Cafe, and somebody said, this guy's out of the same mold that you are, Simpson, and you guys need to talk. So I get up to this table, and I have a beer, and he's drinking a glass of wine. He says, I got one rule, man, if you sit here at my table. I said, what's that? He says, we don't talk about football. And I looked at him, and I says, you don't have no problem with me. I don't even know what a football is, man. So we go along for about a year, and we're not either one of us talking about what we do. And he comes on one Thursday, and he looks like somebody done shot his dog. And I said, Tom, what's the matter with you? And he goes, I have to go to my 50th high school reunion, and it's on Saturday night in Rochester, Minnesota, and I can't go there and get back here for the game on Sunday. And I said, what? What do you mean? I said, why don't you charter a plane? He goes, no, I can't do that. So I got to thinking about it, and I got a little airplane, and so I said, hey, here's what you need to do on Saturday. What time you got to be over there? And he told me what time. I says, will you show up at Eagle Creek Airport and walk in the door, and there'll be a couple of guys there, and they'll have on white shirts with little bars on. And then if you look out the window, you'll see an airplane, and on the tail it'll say N500 TS, Tango Sierra. And he goes, what is that? I said, it's my jet. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, we never talk about, our stuff. It's my airplane. It's going to take you over there. And he looks at me and he goes, hey, that's really cool, Simpson, but how am I going to get back? I said, they'll wait for you. So that was the beginning of my relationship with Tom, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, very smart guy, and he gave you tickets the first time you ever went to see an NFL game.
Yeah, that's right, and that's when Austin got hurt real bad, got a really bad concussion, and we started working to build a better mousetrap.
Well, you've succeeded. I know Jeff Saturday was one of your first pros that wore the helmet, and he told you, I remember hearing this conversation, that usually after practice, after a game, he's got a headache and his neck hurts and all that after wearing yours. That wasn't an issue anymore.
No, he said that had happened to him since he was 7, and since he was wearing the helmet that we built for him, he never had a headache again.
Are there any in the NFL that are wearing your helmets?
No, I don't want him wearing my helmets.
Oh.
How's that?
Okay, well, it's your helmet. If you don't want to sell it, that's up to you.
No, it's not that. It's just that, it's crazy what goes on. And now they're spending $10 million doing a public relations thing, and I'm adamantly opposed to what they're doing because they have 4 or 5 different protocols for testing that I've never seen before. In fact, they have an accident reconstructionist that's making their rule for them. So I want to be as far away from that as I can. And in saying that now this last season, the NFL had more concussions than they've had in 10 before that. So it's got to tell you there's something's wrong with their formula.
And here you have something that is proven can be a better mousetrap, and they're throwing your mousetrap away apparently.
Well, it doesn't. I don't know about that, but I'm just not being aggressive to go out there, and like I said, I don't feel like arguing with people. It's not worth it.
Well, I can testify to that because I invited him here and he didn't argue. He said, sure. It's amazing with your history and what you've accomplished and what you've done and the lives and the guys that are walking today, some maybe with a little bit of limp, but nothing more than that. And they don't have drivers going, having their brains analyzed after their death like they do in football players. They cut open, they look at their brain and say, holy smoke, no wonder the guy had a problem. That hasn't, and for nobody to listen to you, this doesn't make sense. Or
well,
not as many people listen, put it that way.
Just don't cry about it,
Oh,
it's part of the game.
Well, I am happy that you are doing what you're doing. I can assure you that I've talked to a number of people that are in, young kids football leagues that they use your helmets, and the parents are just ecstatic because it's light. They haven't had any major head problems.
No, we haven't had any.
All right, you haven't had any.
We've had none. So
that's got to say something to somebody.
yeah, 16,000 kids and no issues.
That's not bad.
Well, I'd
That's
say
something to be proud of.
it's pretty good.
That all that work in your, yeah. I've been to your shop a couple of times, and you said, you want to see how we test these? And you showed me how you test them and how to read it and all that kind of thing. It's amazing that more people don't come in and say, Bill, show me.
Yeah, well, I would never get any work done, would I?
Well, probably not. But I appreciate you taking the time, and I know you were under the weather for a couple of weeks and you postponed your trip, and I'm glad you did, because now you're here and then you're leaving Thursday morning to go south.
You got it.
Okay. It's always interesting to talk to you. I know when I mentioned you were coming, a lot of people said, oh, good. I said, well, stand by. There might be some interesting conversations, and there
Well, I
was.
hope it was interesting for those that are here.
Well, I'm sure it was. Did you enjoy what he had to say? It make any sense? Well, I'm glad to say that I know you.
Thank you.
I'm glad to say that if I text you, but it surprised me. I've got a flip phone, and I didn't think you were into the texting, but I fumbled through my my flip phone, and by the time I closed it, you answered already. I just figured out how to stop it and send it. So, thanks for being here. I always enjoy talking to you. I know everybody here enjoys listening to what you have to say.
Okay, Don,
And one
appreciate
day,
it.
back down the road, I'll call you again.
Okay, I know. That's when you can't find nobody else. to come
I
here.
knew you were going to say that. When I asked you yesterday if you were good, and you said yep, I said I wrote the text and I backed off. I said now you're going to go and say, well, Kay was in trouble again and he called me in a panic, but I erased it, so I
You
didn't say
can call
that.
me anytime. If I have something to say, I'll come.
You always have something to say.
Yeah, well.
One of the best in the world, a member of the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America, Mr. Bill Simpson. And he passed out the results of his test. Take the time to read it. You're going to be amazed at what he's done. Next week, as I said, is the big man in the marketing and public relations for Hullman Racing, which is also includes the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Howdy Bell's. Oh, no, not Howdy Bell. He wasn't there. The IndyCar Series, we're going to talk to him, and I'm working on a couple other guests for next week. So, again, when you want to see who's coming on the program, when I know, go to www.autosportradio.com and click on the Autosport Show link, and it'll tell you who the guests are. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming and listening and enjoying as much as I do. Don Kay saying good night. We'll see you next week. I also need to mention that Howdy brought his girl with him tonight. Howdy's girl is here too.